What a great way to start the day. Today is Sunday, August 6th. Sorry, I'm completely zoomed in on this doe and her fawn grazing on the other side of the creek down there. Wanted to share it with you because it's times like this that make me very excited to be able to wake up and have this be my normal morning. They both went up behind the bush, so I'll go back to them later. But I've been out in the garden for about 20 minutes, and it's just after 9 a.m. So far I've seen the doe and her fawn grazing on the other side of the creek. Troy just joined me out here. They're on the other side of that bush right now.
Yeah, I saw Mama and the baby.
Yep. And then I was also over here looking at my trellis of morning glories. And as I was doing that, a hummingbird came in and drank from the flowers, and then went over and actually started drinking from the blooms on one of the tomato plants. So that was a cool way to start the morning. I was just saying I'm very excited for this to be a normal morning for us, Monday through Sunday. Right now we are weekend warriors in the garden, and we're here on Saturday and Sunday. We get as much done as we can and take care of the harvest during the week, and then come back up and try and tend the garden on the weekends. So this is the farm garden tour for August 6th, 2023. Our Brussels sprouts are doing fantastic. They are sprouting like mad. We are probably going to harvest some of these today because the ones toward the bottom are getting so big that they're starting to explode. So we're going to probably take some of those. Broccoli is still producing, doing well. Got some broccoli here. And we're going to start over here where there's something that's very exciting for Troy and I. It's our megaton cabbage, which is true to its name. These things are insanely large. And I can't wait until we pick them and make stuffed cabbages. That's going to be so good. We're going to be able to make stuffed cabbages for Cox's Army. So, yeah, that should be cool. Our vines, just when I think that they've got to be done growing, because there's no more room for them anywhere, they just keep going. And the fruit on them is insane. We'll get to them in a minute. Tomatillos, same shtick as in previous weeks. Covered in bees, covered in fruit. And it'll be exciting to harvest these guys once they're mature, so we can make another batch of salsa verde. Cucumbers, they are going absolutely insane. We spent all day out in the garden yesterday weeding, and Duke was in and out. And he was very disinterested in his food last night. I think it was because he probably ate a little bit of everything in the garden. This morning I caught him chewing on green beans. So,
Last night he was eating cucumbers.
Yep. So there's a cucumber, and I know it looks huge, and you're probably thinking, ew, when they get that big, they're no good to eat. But these are an English variety that have very small seeds, and they are still very tasty even when they're that big. Cucamelons are going nuts. Probably get Joel out here today to harvest these. Last weekend he said they were his favorite thing in the garden. So
Joel's also the one who noticed that we had several, I believe they're called rusty back honeybees. It's a native Minnesota one.
And they are
very cool because they're endangered.
Yeah.
And they're not doing well. And to see, actually, I think he said he saw at least 3 yesterday. So that's cool.
Very
encouraging.
Cool. Very cool. Here's our single bitter melon. I don't know that we've been completely through the plant, There's a ton of blossoms, but that's the only one we've seen turn into fruit. Starting to wonder at this point, since we're into the first week of August, whether or not we're going to get much of a harvest off of that, because they've got a long way to go and they want hot. And we're kind of at a turning point here where by mid to late month, the weather's going to start to turn cool. So we'll see.
One thing I saw this morning, just to add a tidbit to that, is by the end of August, from the beginning of August to the end of August in this area, we lose 90 minutes of daylight. So everything is, you'll notice the vines are starting to turn. It's because the sunlight's going away. They're ending their growth cycle.
Right. Watermelon. Check them out. There's like 6 right here. I hadn't known what to expect as far as size on these guys, but they're pretty decent.
They're about the size of soccer ball to maybe a basketball.
Yeah.
Pretty decent.
We've got 2 of these plants here at the farm, and then we have 2 at home in the city. Everything, I'm overdue on a city garden update, but honestly, it's much ado about nothing compared to what this is. The city garden is not growing as fast or as prolific. I'm glad we have it.
Oh yeah.
It's nice to
We
be
will
able...
definitely do it different next year, though.
Yeah. We have, maybe at the end of all of this, we'll sit down and make a quick video and talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, what we think we might change up for next year.
And our dog that's a mouser.
Yes, he caught a mouse out here in the garden last night. Didn't know what to do with it, but he caught one, so.
And for those of you that are wondering how it's doing this well, we did the quick calculations. This is essentially a 1-acre garden. We put down 180 pounds of fertilizer and 80 pounds of pelletized lime. And the proof is in the pudding. I don't remember what the concentration of the fertilizer that we put down is. We just took our soil sample results into the local feed supply store, and the guy says, here, this is what you need. So
yeah.
But I think it's done absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And actually a lot of people out there, I'm seeing on a lot of my food plot places that they're talking about putting down not hundreds of pounds, but thousands of pounds of lime per acre. We put down 80 pounds per acre, and look what we got. So I don't know.
Yeah. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. We have not taken soil samples yet through that center strip in the garden where we noticed things didn't grow as prolifically as others. We will be doing that. We'll share the results with you. The peppers. One thing that we decided early on was that we're going to start these guys a lot earlier than we did this year. We started them from seed, and it was at the end of March. And they were just tiny, but now they're actually starting to produce. Do you have some fruit that we can show?
I had found one Thai pepper. The Thais are taking a lot longer to come on, setting their fruit. But what we do have that we just noticed is we have jalapenos.
Nice.
We have lots and lots and lots of them, which is great because we got tomatillo plants that are going absolutely crazy.
Yep, and to make the salsa verde, we need tomatillos and jalapenos. And there's mom and baby again. I'm a self-proclaimed nerd. I'm a dork. I love everything outside, outdoors. And so it makes me very happy to just see these guys grazing around the property.
And they, to everybody's point, yes, they are extremely beautiful animals. They're cute. They are fun to watch when they're babies, which is why we don't shoot them when they're babies.
Right, exactly.
We wait until they're older and they're adults, and then we partake in the harvest of them.
And we also are as grateful for the harvest of deer on the property as we are for the harvest of fruit and vegetable. It's not about going Rambo on wildlife. It's about sustaining our family.
Well, and it's about sustaining for nature too, because everything that we're doing around this property, all the plans that we have for the property with trees and the forest and It's all to make it better for animals to live here so that we can sustain ourselves off of the land, not only with the vegetation, but also with the animals around it.
Yeah. So here, we're getting into the tomatoes. We're going to do some soil samples up here too. Also some additional research on what's going on with these tomatoes. A couple weeks ago, we pulled some plants because they just looked sick and their stems were rotting. You kind of see that here. I can't remember. It was pith something.
Yeah.
Pith necrosis. Pith necrosis. And that looks exactly like what we have going on here.
And we're pretty sure that everything started right here where you're seeing, and we were trimming heading to the west, and you notice everything beyond it now has the necrosis on it, which our fault. We didn't sanitize our shears in between prunings, and we carried the disease down the line. Thank God we did it at the very end and not at the very beginning.
Exactly. So we kind of skipped over this, but we'll get back to it once we get to the end of the tomatoes. We've got the ground cherries there. I kind of wish they were... This is a test in my patience. You can put me in a fishing boat and I could sit in a fishing boat and fish all day long, even if I'm not catching anything. But when it comes to the garden, I find myself very impatient, wanting things to ripen, wanting things to grow, and yeah, it's been a challenge for me to just be patient and let them do what they're going to do on their own time. So anyway, tomatoes. These guys, there's some plants that are just ridiculously producing. The larger tomatoes have not really started ripening yet. I've got one down here that we'll pick and show you because it is ripening. But yeah, there's some awesome growth, and we're gonna have a bumper crop of tomatoes. This guy, I believe, is called an early doll. It's supposed to mature in 55 days. This is the second one I've picked off of this plant. It's an heirloom, which means that as long as they're not cross-pollinated, you could take the seeds from this and plant them next year and expect the exact same plant. With a hybrid, if you take the seeds from a hybrid and plant them, you're never really sure exactly what you're going to get. With heirlooms, they tend to see a lot of cat facing, and I'll show you what that is. That's this. This is not rot. What happens is the blossoms end up like Siamese twins, and they both develop the fruit, but you end up with what they call cat facing here, where it looks like kind of a crack. You can still eat these. They're still very tasty. You just need to cut out that part. And again, it's hard. It's not rot. It's just kind of a big scar in the fruit itself. So a couple other tomatoes I wanted to show you here. I'm really excited for the Amish paste tomatoes to start ripening. And those guys are down here. These basil is absolutely insane. Look at this. This is an Amish paste tomato. I would say that's probably going to end up being maybe a 2-pound fruit by the time it's ripened. It will be absolutely amazing. So, yeah, that's what we got going on. We're noticing some of the vines, especially the potato vines, are starting to die. And we didn't know if that was disease, watering, heat, but we dug some potato plants yesterday and discovered that they're just at the end of their life cycle. And that's kind of what we think we're seeing here with the spaghetti squash. There's Duke. He's over there trying to find anything he can in the vines, my little hunter. So anyway, spaghetti squash. We also discovered, like we talked about in the last video, we have some that look like the spaghetti squash you'd see in the grocery store. They're kind of that whitish yellow. And then we have these others, and they're all coming off of the same vine. That's normal, from what I'm understanding. and they should all taste exactly the same. So interesting. You learn something new every day. Got a little volunteer carrot here, Joel's potato, and my morning glories. Makes me so very happy that they're trellised up. Patty pan, pumpkins. There's a pumpkin that's turning nice and orange right there. We've got the other variety of pumpkins down here that turn white when they're ripe. Super good sized. Just going nuts. So it's all good. So far, the only colors that I'm seeing here on the morning glories, and there should be 5 or 6 different colors, are these dark purples. And then today, I noticed we have a whitish pink one. So these guys will keep going probably until the frost, or actually until a freeze kills them. So again, testing my patience. Swiss chard, still going nuts. Last couple radishes there, turnips there, onions here, some herbs there. One thing we already know that we're going to do differently next year is we're going to create a spot for the herbs so that they can do their thing. Hey, hon, can you take this tomato and just set it down in the bucket? Thank you. All right. So here's where we spent most of our time yesterday, was weeding this area. It feels so good to have it all tidied up. The carrots are going crazy. Really starting to grow now. There's a couple of them that are about, I don't know, size of a nickel at the top.
Quarter.
Quarter? Okay.
That's a decent carrot.
They're doing well. And carrot seeds, if you've ever planted them, they are super duper tiny. And there must have been a wind when they were being planted, because they're kind of everywhere. And our philosophy has kind of been, well, if it's growing, let it grow. So yeah, these carrots are out here in the middle of the walking row.
Ones are doing really well.
Yep. We're gonna have multiple different colors. Let me back up here and show you the cherry tomatoes. They're really starting to come on. Again, these yellow ones are super tasty, and the red ones are a little bit bigger, interestingly enough. Oh, and I noticed down here there are some of our currants that are actually ripening.
Oh, are there?
Yeah, so I was wondering if you could peel back some of this bush and show us that. I think it's right down in there.
Oh yeah, there they are.
Can you pick one of those so I can show how small they are?
Not pick. Where's a decent sized one of these ones? So there's the grape and a currant.
Yep.
Or a cherry and a currant.
Cool. Thank you. All right, all over the place this morning. So let's continue down this row. The potatoes, again, they reach the end of their life cycle. The foliage on top dies off, and that means the potatoes, it's done as much as it's gonna do. Troy dug some over here because they were just bad looking.
This is the area where we have a concern about the soil.
Yeah. And what did you find?
There was a decent amount of potatoes. They were all very small. These are a russet variety, so we're not quite sure. Like we said earlier, we're going to do soil samples and see what the heck is going on here. What I'm noticing just from working the soil is the areas where everything is doing amazing is areas that we just turned new soil over sod. And so that sod is broken down and we have all that organics in that soil, and I think that's really what it is. So my thought at this point is we're going to add a whole bunch of composted peat to this garden and see if maybe that helps this area. This area here is really one of the oldest parts of the garden that's been consistently planted for 70 years.
Close to 80.
Close to 80 years. So there's not been a lot of natural putting organics back into this soil. It's all been a lot of just chemical fertilizer. And that's one of the things we're going to really try and start focusing on, and is we're going to start bringing our compost from home up here on the weekends to help bolster the composting that we can do here to help this garden, because it's got to feed us.
Yeah,
And we
absolutely.
got to feed it.
You got it. All right, so, but you did dig some potatoes over on the other side of this pea row that were kind of right in that same area that we have concerns about the soil, but what did you find there?
Those were, I believe, the Viking variety of reds, and the 3 plants that I pulled, each one of them had at least 6 potatoes on it that were about the size of a baseball.
Yeah.
So very decent sizes for red. Now, the rest of those rows, though, that are all still the reds, are still growing, that are outside of this zone that we're having issues with stuff growing. And so I'm interested to see what those are going to do, because when we planted reds the last time, we were getting ones softball size off of the plants. And you can tell by some of the rows that we'll show you, there's still plants that are actively growing heavily. And so, who knows?
Who knows?
You know?
Learning experience, but we're still getting fruit off of it. All right, we got a couple of daikon radishes left, 3 maybe. And this one we noticed yesterday was poking out, I don't know, what is that, 8 inches? 10
the length
inches?
of my hand.
Okay.
So,
and so Troy excavated it.
I'm a nerd. I wanted to see. I had a theory on why they were doing this. And if you look down in here, I don't know if you guys can really see it, but right here, there's a line where the dark soil changes to this lighter brown soil here. And you can definitely see the differences here on the surface. And it appears as though the daikon stops right at that layer change.
Yeah.
I've been watching too much archaeology stuff. I wanted to do a dig and see. But it did prove that the roots, this root was sitting right at that level change.
Yeah.
And it was pushing itself out of the ground. And that's a hell of a daikon.
Indeed it is. All right, so now he's got to, the rule is you can go ahead and dig holes here, but you got to fill them back in. All right, there's some potatoes from a plant that Troy dug yesterday. These are a russet variety. And see, there's another carrot. Another weeny little carrot. But who knows?
And they keep popping up everywhere.
They do. All right, so this area over here is an absolute jungle, and this is what I plan on tackling today as long as the weather holds. We need to get the grass out and stuff like that. And then again, you can see these potatoes down here look like they're toward the end of their life. As you get down to the end of the row, they are lush and green and still growing. We have our pinto beans here. Kidney beans are doing well. Again, those guys, just you leave them alone. They do their thing and actually dry on the plant, and then you harvest the beans. More beans, more variety. Here we've got the, that's a big part of my day today, is to harvest beans again. These are the Royal Burgundy, bush style. So they're doing well. And these dragon's tongue. These guys are a little, when you feel them, they feel kind of waxy. And they're definitely more of a flat bean than they are a round bean. But they're like completely stringless. And so they've become kind of our favorite beans for this season. Unfortunately, when you cook them, they lose all their cool purple striations. And, that's kind of what makes them cool looking when they're out here on the plant. Big purple. We decided after last weekend that we are definitely no longer going to harvest these. This is why we call them big purple. We have no idea what the actual name of this bean is, but it's insanely large. This is the one that's got the pretty orange blossoms. Troy, can you grab one that looks big and pop it open so that we can see what the beans inside look like? On the outside, they're kind of fuzzy.
It almost feels like a peach.
Well, that's one we opened at home was almost a brighter pink color on the inside, and then as they
This
dry,
one's just not nearly as developed.
they turn purple. So we're just gonna leave these guys out here because they're not really great to eat. They just they're tough, they're fuzzy, but they're a really pretty addition to the garden. The blossoms, we saw a hummingbird over here, and so yeah, the pollinators like it. This is why we're harvesting beans again. It's absolutely loaded. The fence, the poor fence, can't even
hold them up.
Can't hold them up anymore. So, yeah. This past week, we did one pressure canner full of green beans every night after work. And we had one jar that failed to seal, so we ended up with 27 quart jars canned of green beans so far this season. I have a feeling we'll end up with at least that again this week.
And that's only us. Your aunt has done a bunch of beans too.
Yep.
So
So yeah, that's the green bean saga. We'll probably can some in pints as well. And if you think about it, there's 52 weeks in the year. And if you eat green beans once a week, you need 52 jars to get you through. That's realistic. And if we have these fresh green beans, which I tell you what, the one jar that failed to seal, we popped the top off of it.
it was so good.
And as it was cooling off from the canning process, we're just letting it cool so that we could put it in the refrigerator to eat it at a later time. Gavin came down into the kitchen and we were just sitting there picking the beans out of the jar and eating them. And what was wild is they tasted so fresh and so good that it almost tasted like they had butter on them already. And all it was cooked.
Well, not only that, we did do something different with our canning this year. The last year when we canned, we added very little to no salt to our jars. I think most of them had 1/8 of a teaspoon at best because we were reading that you didn't need them. But I mean, from my personal experience, when we added that, I think it was close to 3/4 of a teaspoon per quart this year, and you don't need to salt them.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's why they tasted like they already had butter on them, because that's really what we're putting the butter on, is to add the salt that they get from the salted butter. And besides, butter's good on everything. So
Yeah.
So yeah, but I really believe that adding that 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt really made a difference in the canning of those beans and the flavor that they have. You don't even need to salt them when you're at the table anymore.
No.
Which is obviously there's always that argument: do you apply the salt to the outside where you can taste it, or do you put it on the inside where you may not taste it? Well, I don't know. I guess my preference now is that we're going to put some salt in it because it added so much to the flavor of those beans.
It did. It did. So that is the garden tour. Probably give you a quick little update after we do some harvesting on what we got out of the garden today. There is an expectation of some rain. Last time I looked, it sounds like it's going to be closer to 4 or 5 o'clock. So we should be able to get a good amount of work done out here. And yeah, that's all we got. Until next time, take care.